Welcome back to the $1 million Tipping Point podcast. Today we have Nathalie Lucier on the $1 million Tipping Point podcast. And of course, as always, you're going to get great advice on how to grow your business to 7 figures. But what makes Nathalie a little bit different and what I hope we get from her is she runs more of a tech company. She's got a plugin that works in with WordPress that helps you build and grow a course. If this is actually kind of how we met. If you have a course, if you're planning to have create one and send it out into the world and hope people sign up and whatnot, she might be the person that you want to listen to. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of hiring contractors versus employees, because Nathalie has had both in her business. And then we also want to talk about how she started a business right out of college, and her journey was right away in the business world, which is crazy. Most people, go work for an employer and have a corporate background, etc. So again, just as a reminder, if you're looking to start your own online business, head over to corporate2contract.com and you can download the 14-day sprint to starting your business. So welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you so much for having me here, Kiri. I'm excited.
So you are an award-winning entrepreneur and you've been making websites since you were 12 years old, graduated with a degree in software engineering, got a job offer from Wall Street, turned it down, and decided to start your own business right out of college. And you know what? As I said before, she founded AccessAlly, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot today. I kind of usually when I do these interviews, I'm like, let's just talk about the business. I love jumping right into the business, but I kind of want to go into your journey first and talk about, your degree in software engineering, making the website since 12. How do you start making websites at age 12?
So we lived in the countryside and there was no kids nearby to play with. And so I basically went on the computer, during weekends and whatnot. And I taught myself HTML and coding, and I kind of had older people I could chat with, and I'd be like, hey, I'm trying to change this color background on my website. What should I do? And then they would coach me through it. And then I ended up learning how to search for my answers myself. And yeah, that kind of led into designing some websites for local businesses in my hometown when I was a teenager. I designed the high school website for my high school, which was also kind of wild. They actually paid us and everything, myself and another student, and they kept that website up way too long because I was really embarrassed by it as I got older. But so yeah, that's kind of how I got started with making websites back in the day.
Oh, that's great. And so did you make them completely from scratch then with your code? It wasn't, because now for our audience, most of you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, this was before WordPress and website builders and everything. So it was just a notepad document, and then typing in code and a lot of copy and pasting of code and being okay, what does it do if I change this? And if I add that?
Oh my goodness.
Self-learning.
I definitely went through a spurt where I was going to be a coder and I took some computer science classes, and those missing a black slash, missing a bracket or whatever it was and screwing up your whole webpage, I couldn't do it. I was like, that's it. Not for me. It's too frustrating. So yeah. I have respect for anyone who can do the coding as completely from scratch to, nowadays there's so much out there to make a website so easy for people who do not know code. It's drag and drop templates. I don't even have to, when I had a WordPress page, I did use the coding section of it sometimes when things weren't lining up exactly how I needed them to, but it's so different nowadays. So so you're on this journey of making websites. You go to college and decide to do the software engineering. And then what was the job offer you got on Wall Street?
Yeah, it was a coding job. So I was pretty lucky because my university program had internships. And so I had worked there as an intern. And it was 2008 when I graduated. So it was kind of a weird time. And some of my colleagues that I was friends with who were full-time at that company got laid off. And then I got this job offer. And I was like, maybe this is not the most secure decision, right? To go, if I'm first in or last in, first out, right? I kind of had this in the back of my mind, and I was like, I've always wanted to start a business. Maybe this is the time. I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage, I don't have these big responsibilities. So I figured I'm just going to try starting a business, see what happens. And the business I started back then is what I call my training business, because it's not the business of AccessAlly that we see today. So it was all about healthy eating, and kind of just, I decided to follow this whole build a business around your passion, which I thought was, good advice. But I also realized, a couple years in, that I was passionate about it, but I didn't want it to be my business. And so I kind of circled back into tech and software, and that just felt way, way more natural for me. And it was a lot more where my strengths were. And I also realized, if I was going to do nutrition, I should probably go back and get a degree in nutrition, because I was all self-taught, and I enjoyed mostly building my website and marketing and doing the tech stuff for that business, as opposed to the actual helping people with the nutrition side, even though that's what I was really in business for. So that's where I learned a lot of the online marketing space. That's where I created my first online course. And it kind of led down this path of, being in the online course space that we're in today.
Yeah, I feel you on that. When I started my virtual assistant business, when I had it, well, it was a while ago, but I thought, I really want to work with health and wellness professionals, because I'm really passionate, especially like the alternative medicine space, like acupuncturists and stuff like that. And then I ended up, with my marketing efforts, getting some clients in that space. And I realized it wasn't my strength. What they were looking for was a lot of marketing, a lot of newsletter help, a lot of social media help. And that was not my strength. So I ended up leaving that field. But it's funny because it's like, you think, well, I'm building my own business, so let's build what I'm most passionate about, and let's help those that I'm most passionate about. But I had the same thing as you. I had this realization of just like, this is not my strength. And some of it was the clients as well. I think their personality didn't mesh well with mine either, but the skills too. The skill set was like not bringing me joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. So
And
when did you found AccessAlly, and what even gave you the idea?
yeah, so 2014 is when we kind of officially launched the software side of my business, and kind of that took over basically what I was doing before. And so yeah, in 2014, and what gave me the idea was that I was doing an online program, and we had a lot of people signing up for it. And then the plugin that we were using at the time on our WordPress site kept crashing our entire website because there were too many people. It was pinging our email server and just causing all these weird issues. And our website host would literally shut down my website almost every night. And I had to call them to bring it back up and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is really, really bad. We need to just solve this problem. So my husband, who I met at university and is also a developer, was like, hey, why don't we just code something real quick to solve this problem. So that was sort of our band-aid solution. We just coded the first version of AccessAlly in a weekend, which is kind of crazy, but we just had to solve this because we couldn't keep going with the website crashing every day or being shut down every night. So that was our, first version of AccessAlly. The only thing it did was just control access to the content on our website, and that was it. And then over time, we were like, hey, we built this, we could add whatever we wanted to it. So we decided to start adding progress tracking checklists, and we had other ideas for things like little quizzes and things for the courses. And eventually people started asking us, well, what platform are you using? What tool are you using? This is a really cool setup for your courses. We want to do something like that too. And so we were like, oh, there could be a whole business behind this. I knew that there was there's obviously a lot of options and platforms out there already, but I knew we had something that could be really useful for people. So that was kind of the first indicator. However, I was like, okay, this is going to be a pretty big project. So what I want to do first is launch a smaller WordPress plugin and make sure we can actually support it, sell it, because it was completely different from selling online courses. So the first plugin that we released is called Pop-Up Ally, and it's still out there as well. But we were very successful with that. We realized, okay, support is not too crazy. It's not too hard to do. We can do it just the two of us. And we also had an assistant at the time, and we figured yeah, let's go for this software thing. I think we have what it takes to actually do this. And actually, I also got my husband to quit his job to join me to do AccessAlly. So Pop-Up Ally was sort of our test project. He, wanted to make sure that it's something that we could both do together, that we would get along as well. And then, yeah, so now he's full-time with the company as well.
I admire people who work with their significant others. my husband and I have discussed it. And sometimes we're just like, I don't know if we could do that together. Like we really both value our separate careers. But sometimes I've interviewed women who are like, I retired my husband. I'm like, good for you. I don't know if I'd want that. But an important takeaway from this story, which I think our audience and listeners should hone in on, is that you started almost with a beta or a test. You didn't go full in and say, this is what I'm going to do for the business. Let's see if it works. And hopefully it does. You were like, let's test something smaller on a smaller scale and go from there and eventually build bigger. Let's talk about these plugins for a second. Because anyone who's had a WordPress web page, and I know this is your business, so feel free to push back on me. But anyone who's had a WordPress webpage knows that these plugins can be the bane of your existence. Like they require updates all the time. And sometimes you update them and then your website doesn't work, which is what has happened to me in the past. And it drives me crazy. So how is AccessAlly different in that? And I remember when we were talking on LinkedIn, I feel like we kind of brushed upon this because I was like, oh, I stepped away from WordPress because of the plugins. So how is AccessAlly different? How do you prevent things like updating your plugin and the whole website disappears?
Yeah, so I feel that too, because we obviously use WordPress for many websites that we run and our main website and our members area and all of that. And yeah, there is that kind of danger with different plugins. And what happens is, developers work on stuff and then sometimes they abandon their plugins, or sometimes something changes where they need to update and they haven't, or you need to update because something else happened, right? So there's like a lot of
I was going to say, or your web page isn't updated, which is like what happened to me. I think my web page itself with that theme, the theme was not updated. And then so when I updated the plugins, it crashed the web page.
Yes. So there's also the theme part as well that kind of plays with all of that. So yeah, I do feel like there's a little bit more maintenance in terms of keeping everything up to date and also making sure that everything plays well together. But at the same time, you kind of gain the flexibility. So I think that's the two sides of the coin is you get a little bit more maintenance, but then you also have the flexibility that you might want to do more things. So our philosophy with AccessAlly is that you don't need to use a ton of different plugins because AccessAlly does so much. So we try to do everything from, taking your payments to managing subscriptions, delivering your courses, and then also all the gamification and progress tracking, private notes, all of the things that you might want inside of your courses or your membership site. Because what we have seen is kind of the duct tape approach where you start with one plugin and then, okay, you want to do this other thing. So you need like one more plugin. Okay, but you also need another plugin and then that needs another add-on. And then you end up with like, 10 or 15 plugins, and that's just way too much. And that's when you really get into the issues where one thing depends on something, but if it doesn't get updated properly, it can really mess things up. So that's been our philosophy with AccessAlly is, as much as possible, we try to handle everything. You still need a theme, but we also have a theme that comes with AccessAlly if you prefer. So, there's a lot of options for simplification that I think WordPress does tend to like get complicated very easily. But if you know what you want to accomplish, I think AccessAlly and one basic theme, either ours or your favorite theme, is usually enough to get everything that you need in one place. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. For our audience, what Nathalie is kind of talking about is if you've built a web page outside of WordPress, maybe you use Squarespace or Wix or whatever. If you're building a page in WordPress, sometimes you even need a plugin for simple contact form. So for people to get in touch with you, and then you might have a plugin to track your Google Analytics, and then you might need a plugin. So it's like WordPress, what it does is gives you a very basic foundation, but any bells and whistles, even something that you think is totally obvious, like a contact form that should come with the web page, it does not. So that is what the plugins really are. They're almost like, I don't know, how would you explain it? It's almost like when you're using a drag and drop template and you have that like contact form or whatever you're trying to put in there, that's what those plugins do. Did I explain that right?
Yeah, you did. So yeah, basically plugins add new functionality. So, by default, WordPress originally was designed for blogging, but now I think it does more content management overall. And and then if you want to add functionality, so like you were saying, a contact form, or maybe it's, I'm trying to think of like, social media sharing buttons, or like there's different ways that you can tie into existing functionality and just, you can get to choose what you want to bring in basically.
Yes. So on your website, you say many business owners waste a lot of time building courses and memberships on platforms that may be easy to start with, but that ultimately will keep them from growing. So give me an example, please, of how AccessAlly excels growth or how the other platforms keep business owners from growing the way they should.
Yeah, so I think that when we get started, I think it's really important to get out there and get like a minimum viable product, like get it out, make some sales, make sure it's the right thing that people want to buy from you. But at the same time, you might feel restricted in some of these platforms because maybe you started off thinking, okay, I'm just going to have a simple, quick course that's like a 4-week course. And then you realize people want ongoing membership and maybe they want a community and maybe they want other things. And you could potentially offer that in a paid way. So you could have, monthly recurring membership that adds recurring revenue and more stability to your business. But then maybe those platforms can't handle both a course and a membership and a community and all of those pieces together. Or if it can, it doesn't quite work the way you want it to. So maybe you want to do the 4 weeks and then upsell them into the membership, or maybe you want to do it at the same time. And so you can start to think about what you want to create, and then you might reach some of those roadblocks essentially. And so one of the things that AccessAlly does is that it is tag based essentially. So what that means is you decide on the timing of everything. You also decide who has access to what using tags. So it's kind of a little bit of a complicated thing to get into, but basically what it allows you to do is decide on your business model from scratch. So you can say, okay, I want to drip this content for the next 4 weeks. And then after that, people get enrolled into the membership. They can cancel anytime they want. They could put their membership on pause. All of that kind of functionality is super, super helpful to manage a membership as well as a separate type of course as well. And then we also have our community aspect that people can join groups and have conversations on WordPress as well. And so all of those pieces together really make it, you have a place to really grow and expand over time. And then another feature that I think a lot of these platforms that are really easy to get started with don't have is a Teams feature. So what that means is, let's say you have a course that would be great for a corporate audience, and you don't want to sell it one-to-one to each individual person in a company. You want to sell it to, say, the manager who has a team of 15 people. And so with AccessAlly, you can sell this umbrella or Teams functionality where they get a certain number of spots and they can assign it to their team members. And so you get to sell bigger packages of your courses, and that can also be a great way to grow as well.
That's really helpful to understand. And I think for our audience, when you look at a lot of the courses that if you're interested in online learning and you've done that, a lot of times it will be completely siloed in different ways. Like, right, you'll have the course which you go into, which will be usually a different platform from the person's web page. Okay, it'll take you to a completely, maybe it's MemberVault, maybe it's Thrivecart Learn, maybe it's ClickFunnels, whatever it is. And then you go for the community aspect. If they have a community aspect, it might be a Facebook group, it might be a Slack channel, it might, and so that's different too. Or Mighty Networks or whatever is on there right now. So it is very different. And then, like you said, what I'm looking into doing, which I haven't discovered if this is possible yet with my platform, is like when you buy the course, you have it for a year. And then after a year, if you want to continue to access it, you have to pay a monthly fee. That's what I'm thinking of doing. But now I haven't looked into it. I don't know if that's possible, right? I don't know. So I'm going to have to figure that out. But this is what I think what Nathalie's talking about is, instead of having all these different things that your members or like the membership part, like that they have to like log into and remember, instead it's all there, which is really nice. And actually a good example, I am part of the Female Entrepreneurs Association run by Carrie Green. We'll link that in the show notes, but she has everything in one spot. She's got the membership site with like the courses and the learning that you can do. She's got the groups that you can participate in as well. And it's just all inclusive one thing, which makes it so nice, even though lately they've been trying to get me to join the Facebook group. So maybe they are transitioning. I'm not sure. So let's talk a little bit about your team right now. What does it look like?
Yeah, so we're a team of 9. So like I said, my husband and I are business partners, and then we also have people all over the US and Canada. So we also have a paid intern who it's really cool because basically what we do is we're hiring from where we graduated. And so we were interns back in the day, and now we're hiring interns as well. So to give them a little bit more experience and kind of go full circle. And then we also have a contractor as well on our team. And yeah, we've had people with us from anywhere from 5 years to joining in the last few years as well.
Did you start out with just contractors or did you jump straight into employees?
Yes, we started off with contractors, and they were, like I said, everything has been virtual with our company, so we've been fully remote since the beginning. But yes, we were just a few contractors in the beginning. Then eventually we realized, like, okay, yeah, we are picking up steam. We should probably go full time with people as well.
What advice do you have for business owners who are looking to move away from the contractors to the full-time employees? And can you also list for me maybe some what you think the benefits are for moving to employees?
Yeah, so I think some of the biggest learning curves for us around employees, at least very US focused, would be figuring out how to have employees in different states, because we do have employees in different states. So you have to get registered to do business in those states and then manage some of those logistical things. So for us, we're really grateful. We found a company called Just Works, and they are essentially they sort of represent your company, but they're the ones that handle a lot of the logistical stuff. So you do still have to register in states, but they will handle like your unemployment insurance payments and like other little nitty gritty things like that. So I do recommend having something like that. There's other competitors to Just Works, I'm sure, that do something very similar, but the idea is that they kind of handle some of that burden so that you can just focus on hiring people and like working with them, and not all the like HRE type stuff that goes around with that. And when it makes sense to go from a contractor to full time, and what the benefits are, I would say are that it can be hard with somebody who's a contractor because they might have other clients or other work, and that could be maybe interfering or competing with your own priorities sometimes, depending on how things line up. Sometimes, if it's a very regular amount of work, then that's not an issue. But if you have things like launches or big promotions or campaigns and things like that, it could be a little tricky. And it could be, maybe your contractor is like, I don't want to let you down. So they just burn the candle at both ends, and then that's not good for anyone. So so I think having somebody full-time, I think it also provides them a little bit more stability. And for yourself as well as the business owner, you kind of know like, okay, yes, this person's going to take these vacations, and you can kind of like plan around all of that ahead of time, as opposed to just expecting them to always be available. Right. So I think those are some of the things. And then we also recently moved to a 4-day work week. So that's something that, we try to say, we're always like trying to build a business that we want to work for. And so that's kind of been how we approach things, is making sure that our team is really well taken care of. And I think you can really build that relationship with an employee. And I'm not saying you can't do it with a contractor, but I think that it's a little bit more, I don't want to say like a marriage, because it's not, but you know what I mean? I feel like it's a little bit more solid, if you will. Although we've had contractors that have been with us for a really long time as well, depending on what types of work that we do with them. So yeah, I think it can go both ways too.
How do you think your management and leadership style has changed over the years with AccessAlly?
So I think when I first started, I was definitely more in the like launch and promotion mindset. And I would say, I don't want to say roller coaster, but definitely a little bit more like ups and downs and waves in the business. So we would like push towards this big project, and then there would be like downtime, and then go again for a big project. And I think having children kind of made me realize I can't have those big ups and downs. It needs to feel a bit more stable. And so we've really focused with AccessAlly, because it's recurring revenue. We know that we can just, keep making steady sales on a regular basis that will help us grow. And so I think that has changed how I approach, goal setting, and how people work together on the team. So everyone at this point, I think, is a little bit more autonomous. Back in the day, I think I was a little bit more like, okay, here's what we're doing. I have the plan. I have the idea. And now I'm like, okay, everyone knows what they're doing, what they're responsible for. And that has really sort of freed me up as well from having to be as in the day-to-day, and also given everyone else like the autonomy to really shine and do well. So I think having kids was a big reset for me. That, the way I was running the business was okay, but I don't think it was the best long-term for everyone on the team.
Yeah. Yeah, kids, I can totally understand that. For me, it's always like when they get sick, I'm like, oh, I need to change my business structure because they've been sick for a week and oh my goodness, I've gotten nothing done. It's usually, it's like, one of those things that should have happened yesterday. But then when you actually have like that kind of situation, you're like, oh, I
Yes,
didn't mean for
it
this to
happens
happen.
way more than you want it to.
How many kids do you have?
I have two kids,
Yeah. Yeah. What are their ages?
7 and 4.
Oh, mine is 7 and 1.5. Yeah.
Ooh, aw.
So, yep. I feel, yeah, the 7-year-old and yep. So let's talk about a little bit, when you're growing your business, what do you think were the steps you took to grow from 6 figures to 7 figures?
Yeah, so I actually think that what I mentioned about switching from promotions and kind of big
Mm.
pushes and into more of a sustainable daily kind of approach to growing was probably the biggest one for going from 6 to 7. I also feel like this is going to sound weird, but we were doing a lot of different promotions for different people. So if you're familiar with affiliate marketing, we would do promotions for other affiliates, and they brought in a lot of revenue and it was great. So I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but what we realized is that we were sort of splitting our efforts by doing all of these different promotions and different marketing efforts, as opposed to just focusing on AccessAlly and getting the word out about our product. So when we realized, yes, like those are good, they're bringing in kind of short-term revenue, but AccessAlly brings in the long-term recurring revenue. So it would be better if we just focus there. That kind of helped us focus on like doing fewer things better. And I think that helped us really grow and reach that 7-figure point.
Can you give me an example of one of like what you did for a big push or a launch, as you say? Because to me, like AccessAlly, when I hear you talk about it, it's just one, it's a plugin. So what kind of push would you have? What kind of launch would you have with that?
Yeah. So those types of things would be like doing a webinar and then trying to get a lot of people on the webinar and then promoting
Okay.
AccessAlly, or maybe partnering with somebody else who will do a webinar too, or that kind of thing. And we kind of realized like they're good and they work, but at the same time, if we just do other types of improvements, so like running ads or improving our website, our search engine optimization, like those kinds of things tend to be bigger for us. Like the other things would get us like short-term sales, but then those would be like the kind of things that would grow over time, especially the SEO and working on the copy on our website or things like that, where we know that will actually make a big increase. So in a like compounding way, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. It's just interesting because I have, interviewing a lot of women, it's such a different points of view on this, right? Because there's some women who are all about the launches and that's how they get their money. And then they take off like 4 or 5 months and then they might have like an intense 2 or 3 months, like maybe 1 month leading up to the launch and then the 2 months of whatever it is. And it just goes back and forth. So it's really interesting to hear what types of people want to do the launch versus the more focused, like you're saying, the more focused, streamlined approach, which is just let's focus on what works for us and continue to bring in consistent sales instead of having the up and down, up and down.
Yeah, and I say this because I was that launching person before. So I enjoyed those kind of ups and downs and like the leading up to it, and then the like I want to say stressful, but like high intensity moments where you can see the sales coming in and it's great, and then the kind of slow down after. But we realized kind of like with having kids, and I feel like we kind of matured a little bit and realized that it's not as sustainable for us to have those big rush periods and stress periods for everyone on the team. And and we're able to find other ways to grow on a more consistent basis. So yeah.
This, you might not be able to answer this. This might be like someone on your team who does accounting, but do you think there's like a percentage increase you saw? Like I'm pulling numbers out of my butt here. So let's say like you had a launch in February, June, and October. And each launch makes you $100,000 and get $300,000 at the end of the year. And then the next year, you decide to focus more on like the consistent. Let's use my fake numbers, no percentages. Do you know off the top of your head, like 300,000, and then what would the next year with your new method be? Or the more consistent focus method? Do you think it would be like 500,000, 400? Like again, fake numbers. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think for us it's a little tricky. So also I think the software side of things plays into it too, because people may not buy during a launch for software, because if they're not really in that space where they're like, okay, I'm building a course, right? And I'm at the point where I want to decide. They're not, so basically our launches, they were okay, but they weren't like 100,000, kind of launches, right? So we would get like a handful of signups for the amount of work that we did. When I was doing courses, we would definitely do like those bigger signups, just because everyone can sign up for a course. But if you're selling software, somebody has to be at the right point in their decision making to say, yes, I'm going to do this. Doesn't matter what kind of bonuses you offer or special pricing or anything. If they just don't want it, they don't want it, right? Or they don't need it. But also with the software side is, if we get people, they tend to stay long-term, right? So because it's recurring, we don't need to always be getting new people. I mean, it's great to always get new people, but I'm like, people are not leaving. So to a certain degree, like some people do, but so we're kind of constantly building up and up. So for us, the kind of launch model just didn't quite work as well as it used to when we were doing courses or other types of offerings. So I think that also really plays into it as well.
That makes sense. That makes sense. What do you think has been your best investment and worst investment to date?
Okay. I think it's, I kind of want to say it's the same thing. So some of my best investments have been coaching and training. And I think those are the types of things where I was putting myself in the room full of people who were doing similar things, who could kind of push me a little bit if I was, saying, oh, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could go that, ask for that or try that. And at the same time, I've invested in coaching and courses or kind of mentoring that just wasn't a good fit. And I think it just really depends on kind of being clear on which room you need to be in, and not choosing the room that you think you should be in, but like kind of really resonating with that before you make that decision. So for me, I signed up for this like software as a service kind of program that was very, very male oriented, and it was just not a fit, like in terms of what they were recommending. And, like basically things like one night a week, your wife should take the kids so that you can work. One night a week, you should take the kids so your wife can have a night off. Things
Oh
like
God,
that.
that was their advice.
Like, yeah, I'm just like, excuse me, like I don't get this, but yes.
Oh, that's too funny. Oh God. Funny. So talk to me, maybe if you can think of an example of a time when a client or customer was unhappy, and how did you rectify that?
Yeah. So yeah, with software that comes up fairly, fairly regularly. So I think, let's see, one example. I think, so when we did move to the 4 days a week, we completely shut down our support on Fridays. And so we moved to just, Monday to Thursday, and, we're very on top of support. So when we're there, we're like really, getting in there and solving problems. But what ended up happening with one particular client in question here is that, there was a holiday on Monday, and then we were off on Friday. So it was like a long weekend, like a basically 4-day weekend. And because of that, we hadn't quite resolved like the technical issue that we were trying to get to the bottom of. And then that whole length of time went by, and then we got back on track on Tuesday, and they were unhappy with how long it took us to resolve it, which was totally fair, because I don't think we really let them know about the Fridays off. And like basically they didn't really expect that, right? They didn't expect it to like linger that long. And so how we resolved it is we acknowledged that we messed up, because I think, people don't realize like we were closed on Fridays, even though we made an announcement. Sometimes it's, not the first thing that people think of. And so we acknowledged it. And then we also made it right by actually, fixing the issue and explaining what happened, and also just saying like, we're going to do better for this. So what we realized is that if we do have something that's lingering, we actually have a catch-up task on Thursdays to just go through and see if there's anything else that hasn't been closed up and fixed properly. And especially for longer weekends like that, like we can actually wrap that up or give them a heads up that we're waiting on a developer, or like if there's something else going on that we can't handle, we won't be able to fix before the weekend. And that's really made a big difference. We haven't had any other issues like that since that, but that was our big like wake up call of, yes, sometimes it will be impacting customers if we take the Fridays off. So what can we do to just prevent that, right, going forward?
I do have, I talked to someone who has a 4-day work week as well. They have a larger team. so this might not apply, but they do have a rotating on-call person because they realized some clients don't take Fridays off. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And like, so they ended up having like and the people would like leave notes on basically what was outstanding, kind of what you're talking about. So if that person contacts or the client contacts, there's this whole thing that goes through it. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to use that. You probably thought of it, but that was to me like, oh, an on-call person, that makes sense. So someone's there to answer stuff and just be on. And like, but it wasn't all day Friday. If I remember, it was like 9 to 11 and then 1 to 4. So they got like a 2-hour break to like have a long lunch or whatever they want. And then it was shorter. Like they still didn't end at like 5, right? It was like
Right.
4 or something. So what do you think? I mean, maybe this is the same answer, but what do you think is one of the biggest challenges or mistakes you made while growing your business to 7 figures? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So I think some of the bigger mistakes are in the beginning, definitely focusing too much on our competitors and seeing what they were doing, and not enough focusing on kind of what makes us special and what our clients really want from us. And I think, we're so focused on like, okay, like this competitor is doing this thing and like they're getting all this buzz for this. But our clients are asking for something different. And so just really focusing on, yeah, what do our clients actually want? And I think that has made a huge difference in terms of what we focus on in terms of the product. And even with our marketing, sometimes it's like people are talking about this in, the competitor space, but our people care about this other thing, and that's okay. We can talk about that in our marketing too.
Hmm. So where do you see your business going in the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of continuing to iterate. So just continue to make things better. And we recently launched our community tier. So we're going to keep working on improving that and just making it even more robust and just having cool functionality there for communities. And then a lot more on the team side. So that's another thing that our company does really well, and people have more requests for too. So I want to make that even better. But other than that, yeah, I think just keeping things stable. We might hire more people as we grow, but I don't have any like super wild plans or anything. I think that the stability is kind of what I really appreciate about this business, and I think our customers do too. So like you were saying, sometimes you don't want too many WordPress plugin updates. So for us, we want to like make sure that our updates are useful and do the things that people want us to do, and that's about it. Like I don't want to rock the boat too much and kind of annoy our customers either.
Do you think you have faced any hurdles specifically as a woman while trying to run this business, AccessAlly?
Yeah, I think one of the hurdles is probably internal. So I think that as women, we kind of hold ourselves to a higher standard than men might for what we think we need to have to be successful. So, I spoke on stages and did all kinds of podcast interviews and things like that. And there were still times where my business was more successful than, say, another guy's business, kind of in a different space, but they would still get more buzz and kind of go after more opportunities than I did, just because I thought I had to be even further along to have the things to brag about or the things to celebrate. So I think, yeah, just holding my own self back as a woman in tech is probably my big realization. And then also just, knowing that what I want to do is maybe different than what tech founders who are men want to do, and that's okay. So kind of giving myself permission to build the type of business that I want to work for, the type of business that other people want to work for, and not necessarily going for those same metrics that other people might be.
Mm. Do you listen to Taylor Swift at all?
I do,
Taylor,
yes.
yeah. Okay. So I know it sounds like a non sequitur. Hear me out. She has a song, The Man, I think. And she talks about what you were just referring to, where like, if I was a man and I did these things, you guys would look at me differently than me, where I feel like I have to go so much further to prove to you that I am just as good as my male counterparts on stage and singing whatever it is. But it reminded me of what you're saying, that first part where you feel like you had to do so much more to get this recognition. And it took a while for you to realize like you could be comfortable within yourself and not need that just to compete against the men. But if you haven't listened to that song for our audience, I recommend it because it's a good song to make you think. So what advice do you have for other women as they're trying to grow their business and reach 7 figures?
Yes. So I think the more you can understand yourself and how you like to work and how you like to, like what your strengths are and kind of what drives you and motivates you, I think the easier it is to build a business that will work for you. And I would say some of my best advice would be to also check some of the feedback or ideas or mentoring that you get against your own internal filter and compass, because I think that's when we kind of run into issues where we kind of pick up other people's goals or other people's strategies and they might not quite fit for you. So I think if you can be a little bit more discerning of the ideas and kind of the shiny objects and all of that, that will really help you stay true to yourself and really build a business that I think is going to be fulfilling and sustainable and successful.
And it's also coming back to the fact that you said understand your strengths, because like you said, you loved the health and wellness industry, and I kind of relayed my story too, but you felt like it wasn't really your strength and what you really love to do. And coming back to that and understanding yourself helped you build this amazing business, which you have today. So share with us, where can we find you? If you have any kind of freebie you want to share with our audience, now's the time to do it. Socials, handles, anything like that.
Yes. So accessally.com is the best place if you're building a WordPress website and you want to do your online course or membership there. And also, if you want to find out more about me, my podcast, Off the Charts, it's at natalielucier.com. And then as a freebie, I do have something called the 30-day list building challenge. So it's 30day list building challenge.com. And that's all about how to build your email list. And that kind of ties into our Pop-Up Ally product, but you'll kind of see what AccessAlly sites could look like on the back end. So if you're curious, that's a good way to check it out too.
Ooh, I like that. Maybe I'll check it out. I'm always trying to grow my email list. Always. I mean, who isn't, right? What is one philosophy, mantra, or quote you try to run your business by?
Ideas have a shelf life. Use them before they expire. That's what works for me.
Like that. Ideas have a shelf life. Use them before they expire. Yes. Use them before they expire. That is totally true, because I feel like there's always been that moment in anyone's life where you're like, I wish I did that. I wish I took advantage of that and I did that. And I don't think you could say that you can't do it further on in life, but there are like sometimes your life situation changes. And would I have started my business now at this point in my life? I don't know. Because it's like 2 kids is totally different than no kids. More free time. Well, Nathalie, thank you again for joining me. And for our audience, if you found this really informative and valuable, help us grow the show. Share it with another person who might find Nathalie's advice really inspiring and motivating. And maybe they also are starting a course and they want to find out more about AccessAlly. So if you want to, find me on Instagram at Virtually Kiri or LinkedIn on Kiri Mohan, where I am most active. So Nathalie, thank you again. Stick around to our audience. We are going to record exclusive content questions, which you can only get if you're part of our Tipping Jar of Wisdom newsletter. Thanks, Nathalie.